individuals at this time, but we are really honored and privileged to have Edward with us. Of course, it's Edward Chamberlain Bell, full name, otherwise known as Josie Style. And Edward, thank you so much for joining us in this peculiar hour. Welcome to the show. How are you?
It is my pleasure, and thank you for having me. It's a witching hour, so all sorts of magic, good and bad, can happen.
All right, so for those South Africans who've been living under a rock, please tell us about Edward. Who's Edward, and how did you get to this? You actually get paid to be part of this. I'm sure it's frantic. What kind of person does it take to be a South African, successful South African blogger?
I think being authentic is most important. A lot of people want to get into blogging because they think that they're going to get lots of freebies and goodie bags, which unfortunately is not always the case. So you have to be passionate about the topics that you are writing about. It is a lot of work, so if you're doing it just to get free stuff, you're going to find it's a very long road ahead of you. I only blog about things that I'm passionate about, which is mostly food, travel, and lifestyle. So for me, I get invited to events that I would ordinarily pay to go to. That is always a pleasure. I love traveling. So when people actually contact me and say, hey, would you like to visit and review our destination? I think that would be an absolute pleasure. Another thing that I actually find if you want to be a successful blogger is being authentic. Very often, and I'm not knocking anybody, but very often you'll see mommy bloggers at a food event and they don't know what they're really talking about. Or you'll see a techno blogger going to a fashion event and they might have the followers and they might have the reach, but do you really actually believe them when they talk about it? And also when I look at food, generally I focus on not so much fine dining, but like healthy eating, trendier eating destinations to go to. So when I look at some food bloggers who, spend most of their time eating fast food, you don't always, I'm not mentioning any names, but when you always see them eating fast food and suddenly they're at a refined dining destination, you don't really believe their authenticity. And I've heard just from various things that people have said about me is they would never expect to see me eating at certain places or eating certain food. So I don't go. And a couple of times certain brands have contacted me, for example, a beer brand. I don't drink beer, so there's no point in me raving about a beer brand. There are also certain, I don't eat processed food. So when I get press
I don't
dropped,
think anyone should eat processed food.
nobody should be eating processed food unless you want to die a young-looking corpse. But sometimes I do get people contacting me, will you review our products? Will you use these products? And I say, well, artificial colorants, artificial preservatives, a shelf life that is longer than 2 years is not something I'm going to blog about.
So let's talk about then what is in the mind of the people who actually control the money, the marketers. They talk about numbers and impact and interaction. And I think when I take my mind back, it's there was a situation where one of the Kardashians, who's the famous one now? Kylie was working with a famous brand, legacy brand, if I'm not mistaken, Calvin Klein. And the marketers were absolutely thrilled. Of course, she got millions of views and all those kind of things. And he rejected it completely, said she doesn't espouse my brand, she doesn't represent it. And the marketers were up in arms. So in that aspect, I'm finding that what I'm hearing from you, that it's when you've established yourself, obviously, and when you are establishing yourself, it's important to say no. How important is it? How do you say no? Because, you talked about the fact that, okay, there's the short-term benefits, you get the money. And then the long-term of brands recognizing that, okay, there's a consistency here, there's a resonance with this individual, and they can represent our brand and not damage it and not just get numbers for the sake of getting them.
It's a big thing that marketers like to talk about is the reach that they got through certain bloggers and influencers. Whereas I often say I would rather reach 100 people who value my opinion than 100,000 people that don't pay any attention to what I have to say. And I've seen this happen a couple of times with bloggers where one week they're talking about, for example, eating ice cream for breakfast because it's healthy for you. Well, it might all be natural ingredients, but cocaine is also a natural ingredient. We don't tell people to have cocaine for breakfast. But then the next week they're on about shooter shots, these green shooter shots, and I think.
But maybe would you think that they're being eclectic or just sporadic and opportunistic?
I think opportunistic just sums it up perfectly. I think it's very important, and you never know. That's what I always say on social media. You don't choose your followers choose you. And your followers are following you for a certain reason. And the minute you do something where you step out of line, your followers can see through it like a glass window. When I come back to the point in case of me drinking beer, I've always been a champagne person or a cocktail person, expensive taste.
Okay.
So when I tell people beer, people look at me and they say, "Do you drink beer?" And I have to be honest. Don't drink beer. I can cook with it. I make a wonderful oxtail, and I love making bread with beer. So my followers know exactly what I stand for. So to suddenly start talking about something that is not authentic is going to stick out like a sore thumb.
But how do you manage to stay consistent and true to yourself in that aspect? Because you mentioned the idea of popularity. Of course, it comes with validation. How do you maybe ignore the noise and stay true to yourself? And because like someone likes you and they have an idea or perception of like, oh, hold on, that's not me. How do you stay true to yourself without pandering to the audience too much?
I think you just have to know what works for you and what you want your narrative to be. My narrative has always been about the best in Johannesburg, so I really do love Johannesburg. And I know I had some fun a while ago. I went to Brakpan, Carnival City, and I tagged myself there, Travel Jersey style, Brakpan. And a couple of my friends said, "You can't do that because it's beneath you." And I said, "I can do whatever I want because it was a really great event at Carnival City." A couple of weeks later, I went to the Good Food and Wine Show, the Soweto Food and Wine Show. And I'll never forget the look on my colleagues' faces when I just asked them, like, what is the quickest route to get to Soweto? And they looked at me and they said, "Aren't you scared you're going to be hijacked or mugged?" And I said, the thought hadn't actually crossed my mind, but I'm going to the Soweto Food Festival. What really impressed me the most is the amount of artisanal products that I found. I mean, I was expecting papa mahodu and walkie-talkies.
Basic generic African traditional foods.
Yeah, the cliches that we always read about. And they've really incredible food, artisanal products, organic produce as well. So when I raved about it, I was being very sincere. It was the best that I could have found. But then my friend said, "You Jersey style, you can't go to Soweto." And I said, well, Soweto is part of Johannesburg and I'm going to cover everything. And I like to think that the one thing I've managed to accomplish in my blog is I can go from Soweto to the Saxon to Sun City. I will feature the best of everything in those various areas. And there's a consistent narrative. I'm focusing on the better side of Johannesburg. So I don't do the mundane and I don't do the ordinary, but I do like to think that I can go everywhere. And something else that I found interesting is I've never seen myself as being a white blogger. I always thought my readers were middle-aged white women. And then one day I was looking at my statistics and it turned out that most of my readers are male. Most of them are in Sandton or Cape Town, so I figured they're either affluent or aspirational. But then when I looked at the demographics in the areas where they lived, they were black, white, colored, Indian, Chinese. And I thought I really liked the fact that somehow I've cracked that multicultural pot of appealing to all sorts of nationalities. Even if you look at the European languages like the Portuguese, the Italian, the Dutch, I love the fact that I'm multicultural. But somebody was telling me Jersey style is a very clever word because white people don't use the word Jersey.
Not at all. Well, it depends which white people you're on.
Well, I'm a white person and I call it Jersey. But they said black people call Johannesburg Jersey and white people call it Joburg. And I said, I hate Joburg because, well, I hate the word Joburg because I hate abbreviations. But I just love that word Jersey style and it just rang. So, and then also taking it one step further, a lot of times when people meet me, they'll say, with a name like Josie, we expected you to be a girl. And I thought, where do you come up with this? But I think, oh, well, to each, I don't really care what people think, so long as they're paying attention to what I'm doing, they're visiting my blog.
If you've just joined us, it's an absolute pleasure. We're sitting with the one person who knows Johannesburg possibly better than most people, and other parts of Johannesburg better than those people who've been here. We're speaking with Edward, of course, better known as Josie Style. Full name, Edward Chamberlain Bell. Sounds so formal.
It's very much a dynasty sort of name.
Sounds like it.
It's when we got married, my husband was Chamberlain and I was Bell, and we couldn't decide
Sounds illegal.
if we should take either or name. And because he made the assumption that I was going to be a Chamberlain, I just said, why don't we go Chamberlain Bell? And the ironic thing is people were never able to get my name correct in the first place. It was, Andrew is always Charles Philip, any of the royal names, Charles, Andrew, Philip, even Anne, Margaret, whatever. The Deb, and then people could never spell Bell.
Really?
I always had to tell people it's church bell. But I think with Afrikaans people, bell is one L.
One L, yes.
And also it sounds like Nell. The minute we added the Chamberlain, Edward Chamberlain Bell, I've never had to spell my name or repeat myself. And the bonus is whenever I go to a media event, it's the longest name on the list. So I never have to look through that list for everything. It's the longest name on the list.
Oh, you can see if you've just joined us, of course, he's got an infectious personality. We could talk about this for a long period of time, but we do need to get into exactly what is hot and what is happening. For those of us who still do have a bit of pocket change left, but we are going into the weekend. It's payday. Hopefully people will be much safer in their excursions. Can you tell us a bit more where exactly we could wine, dine? What is happening this weekend?
There's 3 restaurants that I'm really very fond of at the moment. The first one that I want to recommend is that people go and visit the Marshall. It's in Marshalltown in the CBD. And the reason why I recommend it, A, their food is incredible. It is reasonably priced. It's got a nice little gastropub vibe without being too trendy. But this is my point that I want to make with people. Very often we go to destination restaurants. Most of the great restaurants we go to are often opposite an exclusive bookstore, parking lot in a shopping mall. And we have this misconception that it is not safe for us to go into the CBD. You go down into Marshalltown. It's in a Fair City hotel. The restaurant is called the Marshall. It is just the most incredible restaurant to go to. And what I love about it is there are no billboards outside. The streets, hands up to Joburg City Council, those streets, those pavements are immaculate, the trees are well groomed, there's no posters, there's no signage, just like a really quaint street to go to.
Aesthetically pleasing.
Aesthetically pleasing. And I mean, I've got nothing against exclusive books, but every time I go to a restaurant, wherever I'm sitting and I look outside the restaurant doors, there's an exclusive books, or if I look to the other side, you're on a parking lot. So I just think,
that correlation, is it a stereotype or is it in effect effective? Does it, when you're eating and you're having a wonderful meal, you're chit-chatting, does it cross your mind to buy a book?
I love books, so for me it's a big temptation. If I'm at a restaurant and I see an exclusive books, and I like to stroll, so after you've eaten, especially if you've overeaten, you're not in too much of a hurry to get anywhere. I'd just pop into an exclusive books. I just don't keep punting them. But I often pop into a bookshop. I know if you go to one of my other favorite bookshops is Scoots, and I just go, I mean, I get lost. I often...
It's so expensive.
You know, when it's payday, and you're just mentioning it's payday, when it's payday, you think you've got money and you think you can afford to buy a book or two. And normally I buy 2, 3, or 4 because I know I'm going to read them. But then at the end of the month, when I look at my bank balance, I start thinking, how much money would I get if I took these books to a second-hand bookshop? But if I haven't read them, can I return them with a receipt? It is such a luxury to be able to afford books. And this is why I always recommend to people is join a library, start a book club. And I think it's one of the greatest gifts you can give your children is to teach them how to read. I mean, I'm a blogger, I love writing. The written word to me is...
And of course, reading and writing for leisure, especially when you do it as a profession, is a privilege. But back to the food and Marshalltown, what can we expect there? What do you generally look at when you review a restaurant, and are they aware of who you are?
Good question. Sometimes people are aware of who I am, and it can go both ways. My worst nightmare that I find is that if a restaurant recognizes me, so sometimes they get nervous and sometimes they panic, and then they start to make mistakes. They seem to think that my job is to go and find fault. And I've realized a long time ago, my readers are not interested in what I find fault with. And I don't want to waste your time telling you where not to go.
Of course.
I want to tell you where you should go.
Definitely.
But I have often found it's like if restaurants know me, selling it becomes, they start overworking it and they rush things and then they get nervous and then I don't enjoy it. And I think, you know what? Chill. Really just chill. I'm a very forgiving person. I've only ever sent food back 3 times. That was because it was underdone. And I consider the amount of restaurants that I go to, I can probably count the 5 ones that I would never go back to. Well, obviously on one hand, because I've only got 5 fingers, 4 fingers in one thumb. But I don't like that when people make a fuss, and I don't like complimentary desserts, and I don't like complimentary wine. You think it is like, wow, and it's like, I don't want complimentary. It's like I want to go and enjoy myself.
Wow, a blogger with integrity.
Blogger with integrity. Well, that's a bit of an oxymoron. So, you don't do that too often.
What piqued your interest in at Marshalltown? What can we look at? The food, the drink, and also the environment. Can you tell us what piqued your interest at that specific place?
When I look at Marshalltown, when I look at the Marshalls, first of all, their food is generous. Their portions are really generous. Also, they add little tweaks to it that I haven't seen anywhere else, and nothing that is inaccessible. Nothing too fancy, nothing too fine dining. It's really simple, honest, humble food. But what they do really well. One of the things that my husband and myself love is tempura prawns. And they had the most amazing tempura prawns, which they served with a miso mayonnaise. And you get, I just thought it was like a typical Oriental dish where you get the miso on the one side with that. And I love that Chinese, Japanese mayonnaise. It's got like a very sweet, neutral creaminess.
I'm going to sound so smart. I'm taking notes here.
Are you taking?
I'm going to be looking so elegant. I'm going to be the best date ever.
Well, go onto my blog, Josie Style, and you can copy all the notes. The other dish that we had, because what we often do is I have to photograph everything and I have to taste everything. They also had calamari and squid heads, which was like a lemon and lime dressing. And I had to ask the chef, because I'm a big recipe thief, I had to ask the chef, what is so incredible about the calamari being served with a lemon and a lime mayonnaise? Actually, it says it's a lemon mayonnaise on the menu. And he told me, he said, a very interesting trick. Lemons will give you sourness, but limes will give you sweetness and flavor. So he said if you can combine the lemons and the limes together, you get the best of both worlds. You get the sourness, you get the sweetness, and limes have got like a floral note to them. So it just amplifies the flavors. But it's quite intriguing because in the back of your mind, you know it's lemon, but it's more than just lemon. And one of my favorite tips that I tell everybody to do, if ever you're, because I add lemon juice and lime juice to everything. It doesn't matter if it's roast chicken or a salad or a dip. If you're going to use a lemon or a lime, use the zest. It costs you nothing. Grate the zest, add it to whatever you use in the juice with. And I read a very interesting statistic the other day. Lemon zest apparently is very good for your skin and preventing sun damage and skin cancer. So
He's just complaining. He says, oh my gosh, I'm starving.
oh, that's our producer at the back there. Good, I hope she's hungry.
So there was a criticism by Loiso Gola. They're doing a comedian. He's doing a comedian show. It's Comedians of the World, and he mentioned that one of his friends moved to Australia, and now I'm a foodie now. And then he was like, "That's daft. We all love food." But now we can hear the appreciation of food is very different across the I don't know, different. The appreciation is different in general. So what would you say defines you as a connoisseur of food in terms and not being referred to as a foodie? Do you take offense to being referred to as a foodie?
People have called me a lot worse than foodie, so I'm quite grateful if they can leave it at foodie. I do think it's an overused word. I think it's a common denominator where we all enjoy food. Not all of us are privileged where we get to have a meal every single day. And I think this is one of the changing or defining moments that I had when I first became a foodie. And I'm using air apostrophes there, is I found a lot of foodie bloggers would complain about everything. Nothing was ever to their satisfaction. And they were getting lots of free meals, and we all get lots of free meals, and that's great, but nothing was ever to their satisfaction. And I look at a lot of critics, and we all enjoy reading a bitchy review. We love a funny, tongue-in-cheek stab at somebody.
Not personal, though.
Not personal, but it can be witty.
Of course.
But I've also noticed for myself, when I read positive, glowing reviews, you tend to turn the page. Whereas yet, and I know she's long deceased, but Gwen Gill had an acidic tongue on her, but she was the most riveting person to read because she spared no expense when it came to trashing anybody. And she was clever and she was witty and she was wonderful at it. But I noticed a lot of foodies were complaining about everything nonstop. And I've always said, going to a restaurant, yes, there might be one or two things that aren't right, but not everything goes wrong. And my favorite thing is when people say they waited 45 minutes to get a menu. And I think, well, whose fault was that? If you waited 45 minutes...
Like, what were you doing? Were you painting your nails?
Then you're stupid. You should have left the restaurant. And especially if it's these restaurants that are in a mall right next to each other, you can go to the next one. There's no real point in...
No, just if you've just joined us, of course, we are talking to Edward Chamberlain-Bell. He's otherwise known or popularly known as Josie Style. And yeah, it's been such a great organic discussion. We've got 2 more restaurants to do. I think, will you give us the pleasure of going into the next hour? Do you have time for us? I think we've got, after the news.
I have endless time.
Awesome. So we'll be back. Sorry about that. Did you want to finish your train of thought before we go to the break?
I've forgotten what my... yes, my train of thought, just to finish what I was saying. But I remember telling a couple of food critics, we have the pleasure of being able to go to restaurants and trash them, and we still get invited back a second time, or we get free drinks, we get free desserts. There are a lot of people who don't have that luxury, either because of economics, where they can't afford to eat out, but then also there are a lot of people, not just in South Africa, but the world, where they don't even have a meal to look forward to. They might only eat once every second day. And especially when I look at prisoners who get 3 meals a day, I think if we can afford to feed prisoners 3 free meals a day, we can afford to feed our school children 3 meals a day. I'm getting a round of applause here, so I think let's end on a high note.
Yes, back up to the break. Do you need headphones?
I don't, do I?
I'm wondering if you can hear me.
Headphones when you have a call off.
Alright.
I did more prep last time and I didn't tonight. It's not just restaurants. I mean, it's your call.
Yeah.
But, and he was meant to send me.
Should we do the last 2 restaurants, or should we go
It's
into
your call.
other 2 topics?
Let's finish we can finish those other 2 restaurants very quickly,
What have you got here?
in like 2 minutes, and then let's talk about ABBA, and I've got Mark Lottering tickets to give away.
How are we going to do that? How do we do I mean,
I think he must do it on his. He can.
on
He's
your,
on it on social
your blog?
network.
Yeah. Is there a linkage we can have to that? To the giveaway?
I've got the competition for Mark Lottering on my blog. I've got 3 giveaways that we can do.
But it will be on your platform using.
But I want people, but I want people to share it because I've tagged 702 in there.
It is 2 a.m. and time for your latest Eyewitness News. Okay, so do you want? You said there's a live element you want to do with regards to people who respond first. Are you so?
No, not even. And the competitions will be, they close on Sunday, so people can enter now. But I want them to know they're winning at 3702.
So if there's callers, we can do that. Because you're right. If it's on air and the calls come in, listeners love giveaways.
Yeah, we can
Love
do that.
giveaways.
We can do that in terms of people calling in either during or afterwards to mention that they'd love to attend. Is that how you want to get them away? Is there an element?
I've already set it up on the blog that they retweet, and it's tag 702.
Oh, okay.
But if you want to have people calling in,
No, I'll let you drive it. I'll say that there's a giveaway that
You know
Edward
what?
would like.
You've got a few giveaways. So choose one for callers now. The other one.
You can manage it.
if you want to do a calling, let's have people calling about restaurants that they like, don't
The
like.
call-ins are going to be dangerous at this hour. We might end up getting
anyway, the thing is, what I want to say is that, so when he's covering this, and it's not just, it's restaurants, lifestyle, leisure shows,
The
entertainment.
issue now is that we need to have a balance of what we're going to do now.
And that's why,
How
so
much more time do we have?
So he was naughty, he
20
meant to
minutes?
send it to me, but
30 is it? Do you need 30 or 20?
Let's do 30 because then we can finish off those two.
Okay,
We can do the giveaway, and then I've got a cake that I've brought into studio that we can talk about because we are going to be.
Okay, just for ourselves to apportion the times, do you want to put that maybe for
Let's
10 minutes for each of those?
10, 10, 10,
10, 10, 10.
done
so
deal.
for next time, my babes, just send me those 5 categories so we know it's lifestyle, it's what's hot shows, what food, trends, spas, whatever.
I'm so sorry, Elizabeth.
Does that make sense?
But,
That
we
makes
didn't get
sense.
this right, yeah.
It's also because my data ran out while
No,
I was
it's fine,
prepping
it's fine,
everything.
it's fine. I just wanted to come because I didn't write it there, just to say,
Yeah.
it's lifestyle and leisure, it's
Mozart's
what's hot.
birthday is the 27th, so today is the 25th.
I love that.
Why don't you write it on a piece of paper? Whatever you're doing, food shows.
I've got on my phone.
I tend to get
Otherwise, or it could just-
overindulgent. I'm so
or it could
sorry
just
if
be
I'm
generic.
stretching you. in different
No.
directions.
You know what? I also tend to talk, so
Mozart's birthday. That's quite important. I like that. I was actually talking about classical music before you came on. Mozart's birthday, 27.
I was trying to think of a song. The Eurythmics sing a song I love to listen to Beethoven.
Thank you. That's our song of the day.
But the only thing decent about Mozart was Rock Me Amadeus, which is quite a cheesy song. Rock Me Amadeus, Rock Me.
Well, is the one by the Eurythmics, is it upbeat? Is it related to Friday? What's the name of it? Sorry? I love to
Listen to Beethoven. It's kind of artsy poppy.
We are playing it. I love
Play it. And that might actually be a nice segue to say we couldn't find any decent Mozart songs. We're going with Eurythmics.
I can't hate the classic music found, but it's fine. It's perfect. Don't worry about it. I mean, it's
Or you can ask me, are there any songs that I know
just your
about
song
Mozart?
suggestion at the end.
And then I can say there's Rock Me Amadeus, which I can't stand, so let's go with the Eurythmics Beethoven. We did that once. I forget what song it was. I used to be on radio today, and we chose a really cheesy song. We just played 2 seconds, and I said, "Nah, nobody wants to hear that." So we stopped and we played something else. I'll crash those 2 restaurants very quickly, and then you can say, "I see you've brought cake from Chateau Gâteau."
Okay, so let me write that down actually because I know I'm going to get lost in the excitement. So 3 restaurants, and then we've got a cake. And then lastly, and then what's the last topic?
And then we can do the Mark Luttring,
The giveaway. Yes.
the giveaway.
Mark Luttring.
And then if we've got time,
Did she? You didn't have to come in at such a time. Maybe we can do our phone calls better for you.
I prefer to actually come into studio because I get to take pictures. But I also find it's like with cell phones, you always lose the signal, blah, 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 blah.
Whatever's comfortable with you. Just want to make sure.
I actually don't mind because I'm normally awake until 2 or 3 in the morning anyway.
I'm also a nocturnal person. You can call it that. Okay, fantastic. We've got the balance, and then we'll just wrap up the Marshall. I've heard only superlatives. I want to go the tempura prawns. Oh my gosh, I learned so much. Lemon prawns are going to sound smart.
I will
Squid heads.
crunch the restaurants into a minute and just tell people to go there. You can mention the cake. We're going to do a giveaway because I also love the packaging. It's recyclable.
Oh wow.
And then we can do the Mark Luttring giveaway.
So detailed.
And then if there's time, just to add a bit of balance, I'm talking about selling houses and last minute tips that you can actually make to zhuzh your house, because that's a big thing on TV, those makeover shows.
You see, we did the trial last week, and he's here because remember I said they're potential regular, so we're tweaking that. Remember I said to you today, like 5 categories, and I think 1 to 3 of the top choices for the week on each one.
No, well, should be. I think he's wonderful. You've got all the content, and you've been.
Thank you.
And we're going to get stuff.
It's absolutely wonderful. It's not generic. It's not topical.
But it's really,
It's not. It is topical, but it's not topical. If you know what I mean. Okay, let's get into it.
What time do you finish?
4 a.m. Then back to my day job.
What is your day job?
I'm in digital.
Are you also in digital?
Right.
All right, we're back with you. Of course, if you've just joined us, we're getting the tips about what to eat, where to go, and who to know. We're with, of course, Edward Chamberlain Bell, an award-winning blogger. Who awards-winning blogger? Where did the awards come from, Edward?
It was from the Elance blogging community, and that was such a long time ago. And I've just been shortlisted. I've forgotten who it is. I've just been shortlisted for the South African Blog Awards for 2018 for Best Lifestyle Blog, Best Entertainment Blog. And I honestly wish I could tell people to go and vote for me, but voting has closed. Now we've got to wait until the 1st of February to find out if I won, which one of those I won. I've never been a big award person. When I look at things like an award-winning restaurant, an award-winning wine, I think every time you put something on a pedestal, you sort of detract from the talent that is out there, and I think having a title is just a title. So, but anyhow, I did win an award, and I don't mind sharing it.
Of course, Edward is better known as Josie Style. If you missed it, we were talking about a lovely restaurant in Marshalltown called The Marshall. It's quite quaint. He explained all the intricacies about it and the tempura prawns and the lemon mayonnaise. I feel like I was there. And we were just finishing up on the review of that restaurant, and we're going to do 2 more. Can you please indulge us about what other